Anyone, what are some stories you have wanted to tell people, but haven't had the right AskReddit question to answer? At my high school orientation, the principal was giving a speech about road safety for pedestrians, and he said, and I quote, "In my time here, I've seen 3 kids hit by cars, and that's one too many." He really hated 2 of those kids. I have a demon killing lawnmower. A while back I helped investigate a fire scene. The fire was pretty much confined to the basement, but the whole basement was damaged. Going through the debris, we found a lawnmower in the basement, which is very unusual. But in the lawnmower blades we found chunks of carpet and wood, which is even weirder. And then, just to add fuel to the fire, parts of the carpet and furniture in the basement looked like they'd been attacked with a lawnmower. The owner of the house had been arrested, but we didn't know why. It turns out the guy had been on a 3-day meth binge. He began to hallucinate heavily. He claimed demons were attacking him in his house. He somehow figured out they were coming from the basement, so he went down and started fighting them. He realized there were too many, so he went up to his garage and got the lawnmower and started mowing the demons as they came out of the basement floor. The demons, overpowered him and stopped his lawnmower from moving. So he took the gas cap off and dumped the tank out and lit the whole basement on fire in an attempt to kill the demons. So I had to collect the lawnmower as evidence. And that is a story of how I ended up with a demon killing lawnmower. When I was in high school, I threw a party and a friend drunkenly put a hole in the wall right by the entrance. My parents would be back in a little over 24 hours. The day following the party I went to Home Depot and explained to the guy working there my situation. To which he basically told me, "Yeah Jude, you don't have enough time to fix a hole in the wall." After getting all the supplies, I figured I was good to go out with some friends for a while, come home and quickly fix the wall. I come home from being out around 10 PM, giving me about 12 hours before my parents would come home. I fill up the hole with the mesh and sheetrock. Now it's all filled up and smooth, still wet and obviously a different color than the wall itself. I remembered that my mom painted the wall herself a few years back and there are still paint cans left over in the basement. After grabbing a can that matched the color of the wall, I got ready to cover the spot. The second I painted onto the wall, I immediately noticed the paint color was too dark. It's the same color, but a much darker shade, so my mom must have thought it was too dark and added white to lighten the color. So, I go back to the basement for white paint. I spend the next few hours trying to find the right shade that my mom used so once painted the wall would match in color with the surrounding walls. After an eternity I finally get the right color. It's 3 to 4 AM at this point, and I paint the whole wall. Once I'm done, the wall looks great. You can't even tell there was ever a hole. My next obvious issue is the smell of paint. One step into the house and my parents would immediately know something isn't right. It reeks of paint. That's when I remembered seeing a can of blue paint in the basement. I grabbed the blue paint and a poster board used from a school project and make a sign saying "Welcome home." I then hang the sign in the same room as the wet wall, on an opposite wall to draw attention there, and off the painted wall. I purposely leave the can of blue paint there on the floor with the lid off to help sell the reason for the strong smell of paint. Then I went to bed, exhausted and with only a few hours to spare. I woke up when they arrived to greet them / see if I was gonna get busted or not. My plan worked like a charm. I got away with it. They loved the welcome home sign. I know what you must be wondering, but what about the wet paint? There's no way it dried in time. You're right, it was 100% still wet when they arrived. I just prayed nobody would touch the wall. That's one of my stories I'm actually very proud of. That was over 10 years ago, and I'm still just as proud today of that accomplishment as I was back then. My aunt's African grey parrot talked incessantly, but mostly used cuss words and phrases her first husband taught it. She'd say something to it like, "How's Mr. Peter Parrot today?" And he'd reply with various things, like "Stick it up your ass," or something worse. We never figured out why the parrot retained everything her former husband taught it, but nothing she said. This reminded me of my friend's dad's blue and gold macaw. He was a super friendly bird, kind of like a dog in a bird body. He would just randomly screech "Shut the duck up." I was not expecting it the first time I heard it, and almost peed myself from laughing so hard. Apparently, his ex-wife hated the bird and would shout that at him whenever he was being too loud. He was a cool bird. I would have divorced anyone that was mean to him too. Not necessarily that I wanted to tell, more of I was reminded of something today that I did many years ago. When I was in my second year of college, my dad was selling the house he and I lived in because he was getting remarried. One of his wife's friends, her husband was an electrician and had to do some work to fix some minor code violations for sale. This was the first time I met this guy, never had met his wife. He had keys to the house and wasn't expecting me, so he was kind of surprised when I came home. He was with a woman who was helping him. I didn't think anything of it. Couple of days later in that break, my dad's wife and I were talking, and she asked what I thought of this guy. I said he seemed to do a good job, but I thought his wife was pretty fun. I said I also thought his wife was named something else, and when I said that, my dad's wife's face went pale. Apparently his helper was a woman he was caught having an affair with years before and claimed he broke it off. I inadvertently revealed this and blew his cover. His wife left him, and it was this whole big thing. Strangely, I was blamed by my dad's wife and this guy's daughter for ruining a whole family. The wife in the situation ended up falling off the wagon and eventually dying of cirrhosis. The daughter was ducked up and into weird stuff and dropped out of high school 2 years later to move in with a 40-year-old at 17. All because I came home a day early for winter break in 2003. My mother and her best friend, S, lost contact for about 10 years. One morning, unannounced, S showed up at her door. My mother was thrilled. They sat and had coffee, chatted for a couple hours. After a while S said, "Don't you want to ask me something?" My mother was surprised and said, "No, you look great." S said, "Yes, I'm well." Mom said, "I like your new haircut." S said, "Yes, I shaved my head." My mother nodded, confused. S said, "And I'm wearing sandals and saffron. I'm a Buddhist nun." My mother had not noticed. The mom was focused on seeing her friend, not on what she was wearing, which is nice. My science teacher in 8th grade was talking to us about evolution and bedbugs, and how bedbugs evolved to become resistant to bug spray and whatnot. Then he whips a petri dish from behind his back with live-ass bedbugs in it, and proceeds to tell us we cannot under any circumstances tell the principal about this, because he'd get fired. Next thing you know, he sneezes really hard and drops the ducking petri dish. The bedbugs go everywhere, sliding across the floor. Then after we'd all finished screaming and freaking out, that little ducker proceeds to tell us that they are not bedbugs, they are sunflower seeds. One time I was at the store, buying party supplies for a Christmas Eve party. You can imagine the store was packed, because it was Christmas time. I hate crowded stores. One thing I had to get for my mom was a pack of ginger ale cans. I went to the self-checkout and the sticker for the pack of cans was on the top of the pack. I awkwardly rolled the pack over on the scanner to scan the barcode and a single can fell out onto the floor of the store. As it hit the ground, a tiny hole busted open between the body of the can and the seam of the top of the can. A small pressurized stream of ginger ale was projecting out of the can as it began to roll away. Like a ginger ale sprinkler, it rolled down the alley of self-checkouts, misting all the Christmas Eve shoppers with ginger ale as the clerk had to chase it down the queue of people waiting to check out. It was quite embarrassing. I was chasing someone that stole from the bottle shop, liquor store I was working at. She was probably about 16 years old. As I chased her, I was just about to catch her when she ran out into the road and got wiped out by a car. I kinda felt bad as I picked up the cans she dropped on the floor as she limped away. Ended up getting a phone call off the police asking if we had been robbed. I asked how he knew, and he said someone called up claiming they had ran over someone fleeing the store. Guess karma caught up to her. I just would like to humble brag about my grandfather. We always hear the sad stories of the Vietnam vets, but never the happy ones. In '66 he volunteered to avoid the draft, went in a helicopter mechanic and paratrooper, got the Purple Heart after a grenade hit, and returned home to try to start a life. Had 2 kids, and worked at a store. He used his VA money to get a degree in forestry and farm/ranch stuff. He then moved the family out west to work for the Forest Service in Montana until 1980. By then they had saved enough money to buy some land in Washington to build a log cabin by themselves where they still lives. He bounced between forestry jobs and had the opportunity to work and travel in 9 countries and 40 states. He tried to retire at 55, but was offered a job the next day that he couldn't refuse. At 74 he is still working a few days a week, but is slowing that part of life down due recently having his 4th heart attack. The man is a badass and has inspired me to follow his footsteps in forestry.